Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into a legal case that, honestly, it questions the very meaning of marriage and crime. This is a story that actually ended up changing the law itself, so yeah, let's just jump right in.
So let's start with the big question, the one that this entire explainer is built around. Just think about it for a second. Can you be found guilty of a crime, in this case bigamy, if it turns out your first marriage was never even real in the eyes of the law? Like it was void from the get-go. Should you still be punished? This isn't just some law school hypothetical, It's the real-life dilemma that landed right in the lap of the Philippine Supreme Court.
All right, so let's meet the man at the center of this whole thing. His name is Luisito Pulido, and his life choices set off a legal battle that would span decades.
Now, you really got to pay attention to the timeline here because the dates are everything. So, in 1983, Pulido marries his first wife, Nora Arscan. Then, 12 years go by, and in 1995, he marries his second woman, Rowena Baleda. Okay, it's not until 2007 that Arscan actually files a bigamy case against him. But here's the real kicker. Only in 2016, a whole 9 years after he was charged, did a court finally declare that first marriage to Arscan void from the very beginning. The timing is just wild.
So, to really get what's happening, we need to know what crime we're even talking about. Article 349 of the Revised Penal Code is pretty straightforward. It says bigamy is when you get married again while you're still legally married to someone else. Simple, right? The whole point of the law is to protect the idea of marriage.
So for a prosecutor to actually win a bigamy case, they have to prove 4 things, no exceptions. 1, the person was legally married to begin with. 2, that first marriage was never legally ended. 3, they went ahead and got married a second time. And 4, that second marriage would have been totally fine if the first one didn't exist. Now, I want you to burn that first element into your brain, a legally valid first marriage. That is going to be the key to this whole story.
Okay, so what happened in the first round of this legal fight? Well, based on that timeline we saw, the case against Pulido looked pretty open and shut, and that's exactly what the lower courts thought. The regional trial court and the Court of Appeals, they both found him guilty. Done deal. So you might be asking, why were they so certain? Well, their entire decision rested on this one very powerful part of the law, Article 40 of the Family Code of the Philippines, and for Pulido, this article was a massive roadblock. And here's where it gets tricky for Pulido. This article says that you can't just claim your first marriage was void and go get married again. No, you have to have a final court judgment, a piece of paper from a judge saying it's void first. This is what created the rule that everyone had been following for years. Under this old way of thinking, it was all about the timing. You absolutely had to get that court order before you even thought about remarrying. If you didn't, well, you were out of luck.
So for those lower courts, it was simple. The second Pulido said "I do" to Rowena Baleda back in 1995, the crime of bigamy was, in their words, consummated. It was complete. It didn't matter one bit if his first marriage was eventually, years later, proven to be a total sham. As far as they were concerned, the crime had already happened.
But Pulido wasn't done fighting. He appealed his case all the way up to the Supreme Court. And now, the highest court in the country was facing this incredible legal puzzle that was about way more than just one man's messy love life.
And boom, here we are again, right back at that core question. How can you convict someone for a crime based on a marriage that the law itself says never really existed? It's like a paradox, right? This question forced the justices to hit pause and rethink decades of legal precedent. So the Supreme Court decided to basically go back to basics. They didn't just look at the existing rules, they started questioning the very ground those rules were built on. It was time to really dig in. To get where the court is going, you have to understand this little Latin phrase, void ab initio. All it means is void from the beginning. Think of it this way. It's not that the marriage broke, it's that it was never even built. It never happened. Legally, it's a ghost. And this, right here, is the beautiful, simple core of their new logic. Remember that first element of bigamy we talked about? You need a valid prior marriage? The court said, look, if Pulido's first marriage was void from the start, then that key ingredient for the crime of bigamy was never there. You just can't build a crime on a phantom marriage. So, their final decision really rested on three big ideas. First, when a marriage is declared void ab initio, that ruling is retroactive. It's like a legal time machine that goes back and erases the marriage. Second, they looked at why Article 40 was written in the first place and realized it was about making sure your next marriage was legit, not about setting a trap to convict people. And third, and this is a huge principle in justice, when you're looking at a criminal law, you have to read it in the way that is most favorable to the person being accused. What the court did with Article 40 was so smart. They dug into the old records and basically said, wait a minute. The whole point of this law wasn't to punish people. It was to protect them. It was to make sure that if you remarried, your new marriage would be rock solid and valid. It was never meant to be a weapon to convict someone for a first marriage that was already legally nothing.
So, with all that reasoning, how does it all shake out? Well, the final decision was about to send a shockwave through the entire legal system.
In a stunning move, the Supreme Court completely reversed the lower courts. They threw out the guilty verdicts. And after this incredibly long legal journey, Luisito Pulido was acquitted of bigamy. And just like that, the rules of the game had changed. And this is the change in a nutshell. The old rule was all about timing. You had to get that court order before you remarried, period. The new rule, thanks to this case, is about the fact. If your first marriage was truly void from the start, that is a valid defense, and it doesn't matter when you get the court paper that says so. So why does this matter to all of us? Because it's a win for common sense. It means the law now prioritizes the actual truth of a situation over a procedural technicality. You can't be convicted of a crime based on a legal fiction. What matters is the reality that the first marriage never truly existed, not the date on a piece of paper. You know, the court's own words in the final decision really say it all. They said that punishing someone based on a non-existent marriage isn't justice. It's just being vindictive. And that really shows a powerful shift towards a more logical, more humane way of looking at the law. And that's where we'll leave it. The case of Luisito Pulido is such a powerful reminder that the law isn't some ancient text carved in stone. No, it's alive, it breathes, and it can change. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other legal rule that we take for granted today is just waiting for the right case to come along and change everything? Thanks for watching.